Praise God. Let's be seated. Just thank you again, Father. You are indeed worthy to be glorified. Let's be seated.
Wow. Thank you, Jesus. Hallelujah. Praise you. Wow.
Praise God. So, without much ado, we just receive the ministry of our Papa. He is our Papa with the younger generation. So, we just receive the ministry of Dr. Ogbonnaya. God bless you. Let's welcome him.
All right, those at the back. Amen.
Amen.
Awesome to be here. I want to honor the elders. I see my elders here. I honor you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. It's great, man. Thank you. Thank you, West Mama. Thank you. Thank you, all of you. My Lord Bishop, right there. It's good to see you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you to all the elders in the house. Thank you, sirs. Thank you. All right. So, let me start first of all by thanking Clem and the rest of you, Mr. Dunsi, all my sons, and these guys who invited me. I don't take it for granted. It's always a pleasure when you stand in the presence of God's people. Never take it for granted. My friend and brother, Dr. Paul Lashar, I know he's not a doctor, but I'm going to dub him one pretty soon. Amen. You know, in those days, you didn't have to go to class to be a PhD. You needed a mentor to be a PhD. Amen. So God is good. So again, I do honor you. I'm grateful for being here. I'm just a Sunday school teacher. So let's talk Sunday school. Amen? Talk Sunday school. I want to begin with the very thing that it started with. My question that I always ask every Igbo elder and every Yoruba elder I meet, I say, tell me a legend about the Igbos fighting with the Yorubas. No. There's none.
Oh, no.
No. I always ask, and nobody has ever answered me, because I was told something when I was a child in Igbo land. I was told that there was a covenant between the Igbos and the Yorubas that they should never go to war against each other. So I call the generation that came after us covenant breakers. And I call a lot of the people of this generation covenant breakers. Because I believe that the problem for Nigeria comes from that breaking of covenant. You may think it's the coup and all that stuff. I think it's deeper than that. And the problem is we don't study our legends. We don't study, because we're trained by white people, we feel that our legends are not history. I want you to ask, go check, ask any elder, go check all the legends. You will not see a war between the Igbos and the Yorubas until the 1960s. And we've been by each other for thousands of years. So guys will say, why are you talking like that? Because I know what I'm talking about. Because I also know what they told me when I was a kid. That when Usman Danfodio was attacking Yoruba land, it was Igbo warriors who went to help their Yoruba brothers to stop him. It is this generation that doesn't know anything about covenant. And as long as the Igbos and the Yorubas do not know the covenant of their ancestors, which said you shall not shed each other's blood, we're going to have a problem. People get offended when I talk like that. Don't talk like that. Why not? You correct me if I'm wrong. Go to the Yoruba history, legend, and myth and show me where there was a war between the Igbos and the Yorubas. In fact, we used to celebrate festivals together. See, looking at me again. Oh, you celebrate Obatala, right? You know where, you know who, there's a covenant between the Igbos and the Yoruba. You don't even know that. So we need to talk about stuff like this. Why? Because if we don't dig up these things, we're going to keep repeating the same mistake over and over again. We as Christians, we think that sometimes we think breaking covenant is a good thing. Yeah, it is a good thing sometimes, but if it's a covenant of peace, no matter what it's grounded on, you've got to honor it. And if you don't want to honor it, you need to know why it was made. Are you okay?
Yes, sir.
Please be okay, because I haven't started talking yet. If you're not okay, then I'm going to be in trouble. Please be okay. So you guys have to find where your brotherhood is and your sisterhood is. An outsider cannot do it for you. You pray about a lot of stuff, but you don't pray about that. So find it out. Let the Lord show it to you. Because there's no way in where we find where people are sitting by each other for 1,000 years without a war that remains a legend in their stories. Come and go about history. You can never find the people who are with each other who don't have a story of war. So in other words, this is very unique in the world where there's no legend of warfare. It's a question you have to ask. And I can tell you all the other stuff, and everyone talk about, oh, Fajui loved Iranzi so much. He knew something some of you don't know. He knew that an Igbo man should not be slain in a Yoruba man's house. That blood is serious stuff. It wasn't because Iranzi was such a good man. So you have to look at the elders, the things they don't tell. And part of the problem is the elders don't tell their children stuff. And children don't ask questions. We have to ask questions. I went to Isha. I met a man who was 80-something years old at that time. He used to work for the government. What's his name? I can't remember. Short man, I can't remember his name. But we went there to minister, and I said, I want to meet the oldest man in Asia. I do stuff like that because I'm just crazy. So they took me to the man's house. He made yam for us. I was surprised. He put the yam on fire, brought osoji, brought oil and pepper, placed them inside. I'm just watching him do all of that stuff. And I'm going, but that's the way the Igbos do it. So, being a curious kid, I said, why are you doing this? He started laughing. He said, you don't know anything. Old people, we got older people like that. But just said, baby, he said, son, you don't know anything. He said, tell me. He said, when I was a kid, my parents used to take us in boats to Igbo land to go celebrate the Yam Festival. And he started telling me all kinds of stories. I believe in asking elders questions. I really do. You may not accept everything they say, but if you learn stuff, you will, and you have the Spirit of God, you will start tying ropes together, tying knots together, and things will make sense to you. Problem with the people in the church is they don't ask questions, and they think the white man's history is the definition of who they are. So the church has actually become an avenue for white culture to be perpetrated, not for the gospel to be perpetrated. So we need to ask questions. Is there an African that is sitting underneath my voice now who has never had a vision? There's none. Not one of you is here who has never had a vision, who has never seen into the spiritual realm. But you can find a lot of white people who have they've never seen anything beyond the material world. Why is it so common among Africans? Because it is the fundamental gift that God gave Africans, and that is the first thing the Europeans took away. Because if I can see what you're doing, you cannot really oppress me. So what do I need to tell you? Everything you see is of the devil. So why do Africans believe that what they see is of the devil? If what you see is from the devil, if everything that's coming, if you start shaking, is the devil. If you see something is of the devil, it means you are created by the devil now. So how are you going to be able to be free if everything in you is the devil? If there's nothing in your culture that came from God, how are you going to become a child of God? Okay, ask questions. It's not because I have all the answers, it's because I have all the questions. Ask questions. So let's talk about what we're trying to do with Nigeria for a second. I'm so glad that people are praying for Nigeria. But I want to do something. Elders, don't whip me. If you want to whip me, take me to the backyard, okay? I will not cry. I won't scream because it will be a shame for me to cry. But I want to tell you that a lot of the prayer we're praying about Nigeria is really a waste of time. Because the way we are doing it is not using our spiritual force. Help me, guys. Just stay with me. Let me read the Bible for you a second, okay? Because I want to do Bible, because if I don't read the Bible now, I'll get in trouble. This is Moses talking. Yet now, if thou wilt not forgive this people's sin, and if not, if thou wilt forgive this people's sin, and if not, blot me, I pray thee, out of thy book which thou hast written me. Can't intercede for a people you're not willing to die for. If you're not willing to die for people, anything you are doing in intercession is a waste of time. This is why I said there are no intercessors in Nigeria. There are people who are praying, but real intercessors are willing to lay down for their life for the president. So if you're going to intercede for me, it means you're willing to exchange your life for my life. The people that are called intercessors in Scripture are all people who were willing to die for their people. It's a serious stuff. So I'm not attacking people. I'm not just saying, are we really serious? Do we really want to intercede for Nigeria? Do you want to intercede for Nigeria? Because Moses said, look at what Moses said. If you won't forgive their sins, blot me, not even just my name, blot me out of the book where you've written. That is, let it be as you've never created me. I will rather not spend time with you in eternity. If my brethren cannot be forgiven, I don't want to go to heaven. But if you're not willing to sacrifice heaven for your people, because that's the most precious, if you're not willing to die for your people, how can you tell me you're praying for them? Give you another example. You still with me?
Yes, sir.
When God is judging Israel for David's mistakes, what was David's phrase? He looked at it and said, God, I'm the one that did this. The generation of our fathers don't want to take responsibility for what they did. They keep blaming the youth for what they've done. He says, I'm the one that did this. Why are you punishing the people? Let the sword fall upon my family. Intercession. He took it upon himself. And we pastors don't even do that. We don't even say we're going to lay down our life for our members. If you look at what we're doing in the country, is pastors are constantly, love them, God bless them, no matter how the gospel is preached. But truly, we are fleecing the people. We're doing a lot of stuff, and we're not willing to die for them. If there's a problem with our members, we're the first ones to run away. Go check the church fathers who stood at the gate of their church and had themselves killed for the sake of the gospel. I don't find a lot of pastors who are willing to do that. And yet Nigerians, great, intelligent, awesome, filled with brilliance, but cowards when it comes to the gospel. You cannot be an intercessor if you're a coward. It's not because I think it is better we all can pray. That's why all of us are not intercessors. But all of us can pray. But a prayer warrior is not the same as an intercessor. I'll get you to another person. We call Jesus Christ our intercessor. If you don't think the example of Moses and David works, what about Jesus? See, this is why I'm going to teach intercessors, because I say this and people get offended. Please don't get offended. Because this is real. The day I started praying for the Igbos, the Lord asked me, are you willing to die for them? I said, yes. He asked me, and I said, yes. And I'm going to say it here today. You can go call SS. I was among the people who started the Biafra movement in a classroom with my fellow professors in the year 2000. The new Biafra movement. We sat there. We did it so much so that one of our guys' lab was bombed by the Nigerian government. So Abubakar Rimi can never step foot in the US. Because he was the one who said for the bomb to blow in Akujese's office. They rigged what he was building, the machine he was inventing, and it almost blew out the whole building because they thought he was going to be there. If you're not willing to die for what you say you're praying for, then stop wasting God's time and stop wasting our time and telling us you're praying for us. Sani Abacha said that if I come to Nigeria, he will kill me. You can't do this stuff and go be hide in one place. Intercessors are willing to die. So if we're not willing to give our life for this nation, then the nation is not worth saving. And I'm very serious about this, because when God starts telling you to intercede, you need to think twice. God is asking you to intercede. It's not you just talking to God and saying, nah, God, I pray that you will help this nation. No, what God is asking for is your life. It's hard. It's not a game. So you got little people gathering around churches saying they are interceding, and then, not willing to lay down their life. I talked to a group of people in Lagos, and I said, you must be willing to die for Nigeria. The guy goes, I'm not dying for anybody. And I said, really? And you're praying for them? What are you praying for? If your blood is not, if the people are not worth your blood, why are you doing this? This is why the stuff we're doing is not working. That's the first point. Paul was an intercessor. This is what he said. I wish that I myself was accursed from Christ. That means he would have chosen to go to hell if Israel was saved. He will spend eternity in hell so that Israel will be saved. This is not a game. If God calls you to intercede, you better count the cost and think through it. Because it's your life that God is asking for in exchange for your brethren.
Yes.
I tell you what we have had to go through around the world, harassed. You don't see me in public shouting Biafra. But the people who know who the people who were behind this stuff from the beginning. The Lord spoke to me in 1997 and said, many years from now, your people are going to start agitating for freedom. And I gathered these scientists, these teachers, these philosophers, and we gathered together one of them is dead now, two of them are dead. A former, and said, you need to start praying for them before then. And you need to be willing to lay your life down. If I take the threat I received from the Nigerian government throughout, I wouldn't been coming to Nigeria. The first time I stepped back from the US to Nigeria at the airport, the soldier that saw me says, you're the one causing all the problem. I felt like Elijah on that day. Here you see that trouble in Nigeria. And I said, I didn't trouble you. You guys create the problem. But you can't be stupid, right? So I knew what was going to happen. So I wrote the White House. Clinton was still in power. I wrote Congressman Rango, and he called the US, he called Nigeria, because I was coming to bury my father-in-law. Called and said, if anything happens to him, we're going to have to talk about what aid you get from the US. So interceding has to do more than just sitting in a corner. There you can pray over and over again, but if you have the capacity, you build strategic alliances with different governments, not even the government, or different aspects. So that if something happens to you, somebody is there to take over. That's my point. So these are the four people I'm talking about in Scripture, who are the examples of intercession. You can't ignore them, and God put them there so that we all can see them. I'm learning how to be an intercessor, because sometimes I'm scared. I don't want to lose my life. I want to run away. But since I learned that, I'm like, this is what it means. Am I willing to die for my people? Am I even willing for my name to be blotted out of the book of life so that the people that I'm praying for can be saved? Because every one of them, that's what, we say the Apostle Creed, right? He descended into hell. we act like that is just a statement. But if it wasn't the Lord, what he had decided was, no matter what happened, you're going to get saved. So the next thing we want to talk about is, so we know that doing intercession in what must include our desire to lay our life for the people we're praying for. You know, if I tell you, so this is one of the reasons people tell me to intercede for them, I do say no to people. Come to me and you tell me to intercede for you, I look at you and I go, am I willing to die for this person? If the answer is no, I will say, I'll pray for you. Because I know what I'm thinking. I'll pray for you. Lord, help him. Lord, please just take care of them. But I'm not going to intercede because that means I've decided that I'll die for you. It's serious stuff. So I said the next one is, as you're praying, you want to build strategic alliances. You want to make, I wasn't teasing, but if we didn't connect ourselves to some people in power in different places who knew we were praying for the people and who knew we were praying for them too, we would have not survived. We wouldn't be now talking about what we're talking about regarding the Igbos. I did that deliberately because that's my what? My assignment. That's my assignment. And if this is your assignment, remember what you're doing. We don't all have the same assignment. You know, now my assignment is to begin to pray for the church in Nigeria. So I'm like, I fought the Lord with that. I'm like, no. I don't want to deal with them. Think about it. We talk about this with my sons. Every time I come to Nigeria, I spend more money. I spend everything, then I go home empty-handed. So I'm not coming to Nigeria. And God says you got to do it. I did everything to make him cancel the meeting. Didn't I? I made it difficult for him to make him cancel the meeting so I would not come. I'm not dishonest. I don't pretend that I'm doing something I'm not doing. I was fighting with God. I don't like Nigeria. But that's precisely where you need to determine when God tells you to do stuff, then you know, this is God. So if God comes to you and tells you to do what you don't like, then you know, and he knows it's going to cost you your life. When he asks you, so now what am I doing now? The way that God got me to start caring was to have me pray for believers. Because you can't say no to God to pray for your brethren. Yeah, go pray. Start praying for these believers in Lagos. Pray for the ones in Jos. You know, God is tricky. God can be very sneaky. So he tells you, pray for the ones in Lagos. And you start praying for the ones in Lagos. They say, okay, now pray for the ones in Abuja. By the time you know, you're praying for everybody. Because sometimes he realizes you can't handle all of it at once. So the next level is, how then do we intercede? How? One of the things that I learned a long time ago is that you cannot sit on the ground and cry to God. If you're doing that most of the time, you're just wasting your time. So we have to learn how to ascend into the realm of heaven and do this intercession right there. And it's something we have to be trained in. Here's the reason why this is important. You came from heaven. You were born from heaven. Your birthplace into your new birth is heaven, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So if you're praying from here, you are actually backing up the wrong tree. The best way for you to pray to impact the nation is to move out of the environment and sit above it from where you were born.
Hallelujah.
You're a heavenly being. You may, I know you have a flesh, but you're a child of God, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
You're born of God, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
You have the nature of God. Where is your home? You say it all the time. My home is in heaven. So why are you praying from earth? And elders, I'm talking to you because you guys know what I'm talking about. You know what it means to be in the spirit. You know what it means to move in the spirit. You know what it means to see into the spirit. The problem we're having is too many people in Nigeria are praying from the ground. So they are chicken running around the ground and the eagles are picking them up. For you to pray effectively, you got to learn how to move in the spirit and do it from that realm. Because it is easier to change stuff from there than it is to change it from here. That's why God birthed you from there, to make it easier for you. You have a place there. All of your prayer, all of your intercession about Nigeria should be from there. Here's the third point. If you get there, your emphasis is not the evil of Nigeria. If you do that, you're just going to increase the evil in the context of Nigeria. You want to tell us exactly what you want Nigeria to look like, and I'm talking to the elders now. We want you to tell us, what do you want us, your children, to make Nigeria look like? And if you tell us what that is, we will decree it into existence. The problem is nobody is telling us what Nigeria ought to look like. Our emphasis is what is wrong with Nigeria, even in prayer. I want to know, what will Nigeria look like if your vision of Nigeria is a reality? Tell me, and I will start commanding it. You will start commanding it. I'm saying this because I've sat with leaders in Nigeria, some guys who call themselves ministers. And I've asked them very simply, what is your vision of Nigeria? They really don't have a vision. The vision is just all materialistic. It's not even moralistic. It's not even the structure. They don't understand how the structure ought to work. We need people who can see Nigeria from heaven. Because there is a blueprint in heaven. If there's going to be a Nigeria, the blueprint must come from heaven. It cannot come from earth. And the people who can bring down the blueprint are people who go to heaven. And it is you. Me, I apologize if I offend you, but I'm not afraid. The only people who can bring it down is you. You. You are our fathers and our mothers. We can bring it down too. But our people have a saying that what an elder to look. A young man climbing a palm tree may not be able to see it. So if our elders don't have a vision for Nigeria that they can explain to us, then we have to go find it for ourselves. Are you okay? So our desire, and this is why I'm doing what I'm doing with these young people. Our desire is, what is your vision of how the glory of God looks in Nigeria? Everybody knows what's wrong in Nigeria. Even a chicken knows. When they're chasing the chicken in Nigeria, he knows what is wrong with him, what is wrong with the country. I'm joking, okay? Come on, even the chicken knows, okay? The lizard in Nigeria knows what's wrong in Nigeria. That's not the issue. The issue is who has the clear what? Vision of the scroll and of the what? And of the blueprint to bring it down. And to do that, you have to find out also the blueprint of all the tribes, all the families of the nation. And you need to find out how those blueprints are attached together. And it is the believer who can sew it together, because the believer is the one that doesn't belong to a particular tribe. If I tell believers all the time, the amount of authority, the amount of power God has given you to be able to transform, but you cannot do it from here. Oh, I know that's what the liberation theologians and liberation politicians teach. And they talk about change from below. Nonsense. Because you start from the ground, you're going to repeat the same process. And it's going to, that stuff on the ground is going to affect the same people on top. So you start from the ground and you don't transform the people. You just change their greed, G-R-E-E-D, G-R-I-D. That's all you do. You change the greed for enhancing and structuring greed. You've not changed anything. Because you have to ask yourself, if in fact we are transforming people, how come the church is just as corrupt as the world in which it is? How come a leader in the church rising to the top and it has the same kind of what? Streak of wickedness and streak of unrighteousness, streak of lack of mercy and justice that the politicians have? Put a Christian preacher in Nigeria by the side of the politician, you will see the same what? The same existential ennui, existential anxiety, existential processes, the whole same psychopathology that sits in the politician, sits in the preacher. Very few of us as preachers, and we are the ones that nobody invites. Really. So you can't start it from here. You cannot do that. You must do what? Come on. You must ascend. You must ascend. You must get to where you came from. And I really beg your forgiveness, elders, but the way we've preached the gospel has created a problem for us in Nigeria. First of all, we're using the word born again, which the white people gave us. Is Christianity a reincarnation of the religion?
No.
Why are we using the word term born again? Because that's not what Jesus said. That's not what he said. But we've made it such a reality and we turned it that way. What Jesus said, you must be born from above. Nicodemus is the one that said you must be born again. Because like every Igbo man and every Jew, he believes in reincarnation. This is not reincarnation. You are a new creature. You came from the throne of God. Your soul is cut from the very divinity and the heart of God. You are new on earth, which means you're bringing a new code into this place. You're a child of God. Are you not?
Yes, sir.
So, if you want to change the world, what do? You step back into the realm from where you came from. We use worship mainly as an emotional stuff to strengthen our emotion and to get what we want, our material resources, rather than using worship as a way of ascending back into the throne and looking in the face of the Father and say, I don't like what I see down there. It is your right. It's your right to ascend. It's your right to enter. It's your right to go there because that's your home. And you don't have to wait till you die before you get there because it's always open for you. Every year people talk about unlocking heaven. Who locked it? They talk about an open heaven. You always have an open heaven. That's where you came from. Heaven is always open for you. You don't need to die to do that. You can go in your bed tonight and say, Father, I need to have a conversation with you. And he will draw you up to the throne room and you have a conversation. That's your right. Even Jesus said, what? I'm the door, right?
Yes, sir.
He said, I'm the door and you're going to enter me when you die. No, he didn't say that. Did he? He said, I am the door. By me the sheep do what? Go in and come out and find pasture, which means it's open. You can go in any day. And one of the things we've done to believers is we've not told them that. Now, these kids know this stuff. We've not told them this is your right. From the day you were born from heaven, anytime you want, you can step into the heavenly realm. You can enter into the throne room. You can actually engage the Father and engage his angels and then bring the same substance of your engagement down to earth. You are a child of God. You have the same nature as your Father in heaven. It isn't amazing that we carry all of this stuff and all we're doing is playing church and playing minister, playing ministry. The ministry of carrying cassava, the ministry of water carriers, the ministry of hectare tires. We're doing all of that stuff and we're bringing nothing from there. We're just taking earthly things and making them into ministries. But this is not what we were brought here for. We came here to transmute and transform this world. But we can't do it from down here. We must do it from up there. Why? Because we're seated in heavenly places with Christ. Isn't that amazing? Let me just be, can I do this, Papa? Okay, right. No, so the Bible says you're seated in heavenly places, right? Which means that everywhere Christ is in heaven, you are there. It didn't say you're seated in one place. See, you're seated everywhere.
No, no.
I'm not the one that said this. It's in the Bible. The Bible says places. Christian think place. The Bible says heavens. Christian think heaven. Bible says thrones. Christian think throne. We always bring it to the what? To the limitation principle of our own existential experience rather than actually understand it in the context that God speaks it. You see, nobody else in this world is going to change this world but you. Nobody can change Nigeria but you. But if you, I believe, we keep doing from the ground, it's not going to happen. And we can talk about a lot of other stuff like, why is it that Christians, I was telling my friend and my brother, instead of telling him, I said, this is the thing we've done to people. You came from heaven, you came from the throne of God. The day you were born, the day you said yes to Jesus Christ, bam, you became a heavenly creature. You can go up and down, right? So what do? We now say to you, the soul that came from God, that is now new, that is born from heaven, we now talk about that soul as if it is the worst thing. We take the old soul principle and put it on this new soul. So we talk about the new soul as if it came from the devil. So because we're not making a distinction between our before and our after. We're not making a distinction between our earthly soul creation and the descent of the Spirit and this what? And our soul that gets born from the very death of Jesus Christ. We're not making that distinction. So what are we doing? We're constantly saying, my soul is making me do this. My soul is having a problem. My soul is doing this. Which soul are you talking about? Is it that soul that just came from the throne of God that doesn't have a record of sin? Where the Bible says that you've been cleansed of all your sin. Which soul are you talking about? You're talking about the old one. So what you've done is, you've got, Pentecostals, please forgive me, your spirit is as big as this house. Your soul is as small as my finger. And your body is as big, which means you don't have a way of bringing stuff from heaven to earth because you've cursed your soul into emaciation. Do you know that that's why unbelievers manifest and Christians don't manifest? And if you look at the people who manifest among Christians as the ones who have built up their soul and made it expansive so that the Spirit can pass through it and manifest. What did Jesus die for? Don't answer me, I don't care. What did Jesus die for? Your soul. He gave his life for your soul. So which means your soul is so important. Why? Because it is the channel by which the Spirit, God's word, deals with your concretity. You are a child of God. You can change this nation. My job now is to tell believers who they are. Not playing with all that stuff. To tell you what you can do. Not interested in telling you how terrible you are. I'm not just telling you what a mistake. I know what the sin of Nigeria is. And when I say something, I always bring it to what can the believer do? I think Christian identity and the consciousness of your integral interaction or interconnection with divinity is what makes you unique, and that's from where you change this nation. You don't change it by sitting around and shouting out in heaven. It's amazing when you move in the Spirit and you see Christians. I'm telling you what I see, okay? See Christians, all they are doing in the ground, they're going, they are shouting to the heavens. They are beating heaven. But you don't see any of them up there. Train yourself to move up there. Now, the more, so, but I love you guys and I believe in what you're doing. But we have to, if somebody doesn't teach us how to do this stuff, we can do it. And just in case you're thinking that I'm just talking, I have changed cities by what I've told you. It's on record that the city I live in, Venice, California, was the worst city of crime. Every day you come out, they'll have dead bodies around the place. Gangs. My church, the church area before I got there, people were selling drugs there. Women were parking their truck and having prostitution there. They use 5 miles from the university, from Loyola University, you can smell. You can smell Venice. If somebody ever lived in Los Angeles, you know Venice used to be a smelly place. The thing from the beach was coming out. I mean, all kinds of stuff was happening in the city. I came into the city, And I wanted to do what we do as Christians. I wanted to call a prayer meeting. And God says, don't do it. You know, as a Nigerian, what I'm going to do? That's the devil. I bind you. And God came back again. No, it's me talking. Son, stop it. Son, of course, I was making fun of my wife. My wife is awesome. That I said, my wife being a nice, deeper life holiness girl, she said, let's go out and do evangelism. And I'm an evangelist. I started in Nigeria as an evangelist. I was one of the youngest evangelists before the other small ones here. Preached my first sermon in 1968 in Cameroon. Of course, came back 70, started doing it. But anyway, that's something else. So, so I went. She said, let's go. I said, well, and God said, I wanted to do. God said, if you step out and do that, I will take my presence away. But this is evangelism. So I'm so upset with God. And he says, go back into that church. I'm a pastor from Methodist Church. Yeah, yes I am. So he says, go back into that church. So I go back into the church and he says, you need to lay down on this altar. So every day, every evening, I'm at the altar, spitting, sweating. I wasn't praying because I didn't know what to pray. Let me tell you why I didn't know what to pray. My church had altars worship to Medusa. Of course, the Greek goddess. They had altar to Medusa. They had rave parties on Friday night. You know what a rave is, right? The youth pastor was smoking bong. You know what a bong is, right? Young people know what a bong is. That thing that they used to smoke hashish. They were smoking, giving it to the boys to smoke. The senior pastor before I came, the youth pastor of the church before I came, the senior pastor was a flaming homosexual, sleeping with little boys. The place was full of all kinds of mess. And the Methodist church didn't tell me. They just said, you owe us. We paid your way through school. Can you come and help us? And God said, go. I'm like, God, are you sure? I didn't know what was happening. This is the thing that God does. He didn't tell me what was happening in the church. I'm a seer. He blinded me completely from seeing what was going because I wouldn't go. On Friday nights, on Saturday night, this kid will take ecstasy. And on Sunday morning, they will be dancing in church, and you will think that the Holy Ghost is there. And then you look in their eye and you see yellow. I'm not making this up. You can ask the people. So much so that when I came there, they had a ring and everything. So every Friday they were doing, you could see the demonic. The place smelled. And I'm like, God, I need to do this. There's no spiritual warfare. Go into the room. So every day I came and I lay on the altar. Then pretty soon my wife joined me. And that's what we did. Laid on the altar every day. Didn't know what to pray. So going up, just going straight. He said, and every time I laid on the altar, he said, come up. And I would just leave my body and get into the heavenly realm and be with the Father. Come back. As I'm going up, I see this woman sitting on the city. Her skirt covered the whole city. And you know me. I started from the 70s. I'm a Nigerian. I know how to shabadize. Yes, so I'm like, I want to start. And God says, shut up. So I go up, I come down, I go up, I come down, just fellowshipping with the Father. One day I'm going up, after 3 years of doing this, I come out and the woman is gone. The city begins to change. The police department has record that it is our presence at that corner that changed the city. We're not talking. And we don't even know because we don't know how they did. But they told my wife that they are so glad that we pastor that church. Because every Friday they will break fights there. The city changed. Now when I came into Venice, the average for the housing was about 200,000. You cannot buy a house in Venice for 2.5 million right now. So I want to show you that, and I can tell you other things. I was in Lansing. He said every city I've lived in, the one I'm living with now, you know California very well, don't you? Okay.
They were visitors.
Yeah, but I live in Lake Elsinore.
Okay.
You know how it hasn't rained for years.
Of course.
We came in there and we began to speak to the atmosphere and it started raining. Things were not growing. When I talk to you about what you can do, I'm not talking from theory. I'm not talking from theory. I'm actually talking from actual experience. Jalingo was a place where they could not plant a Pentecostal church. Until as a 17-year-old, I went there and began to do the same thing. And when I was doing this, I wouldn't even tell my pastor that I was leaving my body. Because you know what they will do? They'll bring me from church and cast out demons from me. So I just ignored them. You know, it's leaving my body. That's how I dealt with the guys who were there, the witches who were around my house. I met them in the spirit. Because they don't see Christians do that. So immediately you put yourself, you go. And the reason they do that is because the thing that binds them to their body, you don't have any. You don't have anything binding your soul to your body because your soul comes from heaven. Theirs comes from earth. Don't you know that? They are of Adam, you are of Christ. The first man was of the earth, earthly. The second man is the Lord from heaven. So that means you are from the second man. You're not from the first Adam. You have to choose who you belong to. So in Venice, things began to change. All of a sudden, because of the decrees we were making, the ways we were moving in the spirit, now Google headquarters is in Venice. Facebook is in Venice. Snapchat is in Venice. All of them are coming to Venice. It's now the beach where they used to smoke Igbo and do all the stuff. It's now called what? Silicon Beach. It's now Silicon Beach. All things are changing there now. I couldn't even afford a house in the place. So I now have to move to Lake Elsinore. But I've done my job.
Interesting.
I've done my job. So how come there's so many Christians in Lagos and nothing is changing? Where are they in the spirit realm? If you tell a Christian in Nigeria that you left your body and you went at night and you were walking around at night in the spirit, going from place to place, they will say that guy is an occultist. So what you're telling me is that an occultist has greater power than you do. I remember a Christian in Nigeria saying to me when I was praying and calling on the name of Yahweh and doing my chants, chanting the name of God, saying his chanting is magic. I said, you don't chant? What, you speak in tongues and you don't chant? Why do you have a gift of tongues? Why do you have the speaking in tongues if you're not chanting? Do you think that those people in your village who are speaking gibberish when they are doing their juju, you think they learned it from where? You think they learned it from Satan? He didn't start it. Satan never created anything. Everything he does is an imitation of what belongs to you.
Yes,
Because the principle of linguistic cadence and the capacity to use your tongue to frame an atmosphere is a law of nature. So now God gives you a language that you can use to tailor the atmosphere, and you don't use it because you're afraid you're going to be chanting. God gave me a gift of tongues. Something I can allow in me. Allow the Spirit to pray from inside so that God can talk to himself. This is who you are. Are you not a child of God? So why is it that they are moving in the air and you are sitting in the ground? Who died and made you chicken? I thought you were an eagle. Your church made you a chicken. I thought you were a child of God. The embodiment of divinity upon the face of the earth, because you're born from his being. You can move anywhere you want. And in fact, already you are everywhere, because the Bible says you're seated in heavenly places with Christ. That means everywhere Christ is now, you're present. It's just that you're not conscious of being there. I'm done. God bless you.